this week's edition of the RDA Central West Business Leaders Breakfast, and I'm really glad you're able to join us today. This morning, I'm sitting down with Weston Ryan, Principal at well-known accounting and business services firm pmwPlus. Weston, welcome to breakfast.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, great to have you here this morning. And for our regular viewers, we thought, what better time to sit down with a local accounting and business services firm than at the end of the financial year? You might be able to give some of our regular viewers some good tips and advice, hopefully during today.
And my mum died a few years ago, and I didn't have a link, and so I decided to buy a place up here. Yep. Was travelling up on weekends, and then Sundays became a misery for me. So I decided that I'd just stay in Orange.
Well, look, it's got an unmatched lifestyle here. I think that goes without saying.
Yeah,
and you were saying your family had a long connection with the Vic Hotel, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We came from Goolma, outside of Wellington. We had a pub in Goolma, left there in 1927 and came down to the Vic, and we had the Vic till 1987.
A long history and long connection to the region for sure.
Indeed.
Yeah, lovely. Awesome. Now, Weston, just thought we'd touch base. You know, there's been a lot of challenges for local business over recent months. Businesses have had to adapt to the difficult circumstances. But one of the other things that's really probably been, you've interacted with has probably been a number of the different stimulus measures that have been announced to date. From your client's perspective, what have been some of the feedback on the ground that you've received about some of the challenges businesses have faced, but also which of the stimulus measures have they given you guys feedback on that seem to have worked well, and are there any still open that people should be aware of?
Sure. Well, businesses have definitely suffered, and some industries have been hit a lot harder than others. We're fortunate in Orange, we've got a pretty diverse economy, but clearly anyone with entertainment or catering, that sort of business has really been hit hard. And when it comes down to it, it's basically cash. So the stimulus packages that governments and have come from all sorts of areas have been really appreciated and really jumped on by a lot of our clients. The hardest challenge for us was actually getting the information out there to make sure people were coming to us to see whether they qualified or not. The Newcrest have got one at the moment that they're running, Beyond the Curve, with grants of 5,000 and 10,000 for Orange, Cabon and Blaney, I think.
It's been fantastic, and we should really give a shout out to Newcrest. I think they had their 120 grand they put towards the staycation promotion around town, and now they're working with our friends at BizHQ for Beyond the Curve. And I think it's been fantastic. As you said, it's that immediate support for business just to pay some of those bills, and then it's that additional support to help give them those skills to develop their business going forward. So I guess if you're a local business and you want to know more in Orange, Blaney and Cabon, we'll put up that Newcrest link, the Cadia link, on the RDA Facebook page after this morning's chat. And Wayne Sunderland and the team down at BizHQ, they're doing fantastic stuff. And I think from RDA's perspective, Weston, I think that's been one of the positives out of this period. It's been the collaborative way that the non-government or the government organisations have been working together to support local businesses. Because, as you said at the top, they're doing it tough. They're coming out of it now, but I think there's still a bit of hard yakka ahead.
Absolutely. We've got the state government grants. They've been very well received. The application time was extended till the end of the month for those ones, and they're grants of up to 10,000. And what they needed was to be an employer. You needed to have staff, but you needed to have a drop of turnover of 75% for 2 weeks. Now, that coincided with our food week. Yeah. So typically, people in hospitality in Orange, that's their big 2 weeks. So it probably wasn't hard to justify a 75% drop when Food Week was called off. Yeah, so a lot of people would have qualified for that one.
Yeah, I think it's been well received, that one. I can't recall the exact numbers, but it's been very heavily subscribed across the state, and I think it's been giving some people some of that support. I know RDA, we did our business impact survey in April, so to get a feel for how businesses were coping at that point. And I know the stimulus measures that were really well received were the waiving of fees, the cash flow boost for business, that small business grant from the New South Wales state government, and I think it was because that was immediate support, helping businesses here and now, and opposed to, I guess, the instant asset write-off and things like that, because I think that was more if you had kind of maybe down the track now where businesses are starting to kick over again, that instant asset write-off could have been utilised.
Well, I think there's been a number of things on a number of levels. So there's the cash boost was a terrific one to get money into the economy. JobKeeper has been really well received by people. Complicated. A lot of changes came through on that. I think there's something like 20 changes in the first month of its operation. So staying on top of that was difficult. And getting the word out to who qualified. So speaking to our clients and getting that dialogue going to say, yeah, you can get in, or analysing it to see whether people were eligible. But there's non-financial ones. There's certainly the tax ones, and those instant asset write-off or the accelerated depreciation, which is for the big items of plant this year, they can actually change people's minds. There's a lot of industries that have done well. Mine-related industries have done well. And if they can put money into the economy through making their business better and better set up for the future, that's fantastic. And then there's insolvency law. There's the people that it's really hard to determine whether they're in a position or not, their solvency position. That's been loosened up so that the thresholds have increased to debts of $20,000 before people can take action, and 6 months for you to respond. It's not one that gets a lot of publicity, but it's actually, for businesses on the edge, it's quite an important one to bear in mind. It gives you that little bit of breathing space to get your affairs in order.
Yeah, it's as you said, it's an unprecedented situation that I guess we find ourselves in, and government, all levels, local, state and federal government, have been working together and trying to deal with the situation as best they can. And I think you're right, there's been a pathway or a different little number of stimulus measures trying to support those different sectors of the economy, so together we can work our way through this difficult time. Yeah. I guess we're coming up to the end of the financial year, as I said at the top of the interview. Few days left. There's been business practices have had to change, people working remotely during COVID. Have you got any tips for our regular viewers, be it local businesses or individuals, things to think about as they head towards the end of the financial year and they're starting to think about those tax returns?
Yeah, I suppose the first one would be, don't take advice from your friends at the pub if you can get to a pub. There's some really dodgy tax advice that gets circulated at this time of the year. But other than that, I think people are going to be keen to get their tax in this year. A lot of people would have had tax withheld assuming they would have a higher rate of income, whether they're companies or individuals, that'll apply. So people will be ready to get out of the blocks early, I think, this year to get a refund. Just make sure that your tax affairs are finalised, so that things like PAYG summaries, which most people won't receive this year, they're on STP, single touch payroll reporting. They've got to be finalised by your employer. A lot of if you've got investments, sometimes they take a little while to come in, and they're not on your they won't pre-fill into your return. So sometimes if you're really keen to get out of the blocks, you just have to wait for a month maybe to make sure everything's been finalised.
Working from home, does that ever throw up any deductions or things that people might not have thought about that might have changed their tax minimisation, I guess, that they can go through?
Yeah, claiming what's legal and what they're entitled to. The ATO have come out with, it's actually quite complicated for people working from home, and it's an area that the ATO have scrutinised closely for quite a long time, recognising that they have that there's a lot of people be claiming home office expenses now. They've put in a statutory formula that people can use and rely on as a safe harbour. The other thing that they'll look at, though, is people that are used to claiming mileage, for example, in their travel. If you're claiming maybe a statutory 5,000 kilometres that you did last year, the tax office will be saying, well, did you travel that this year? And they'll be looking at things like that. They're pretty clever. They've got very good systems, very good data analysis.
Yeah, okay. Well, there are a couple of good tips there for people to think about as they start coming towards the end of the financial year. And I think we've kind of touched on this one during this morning's chat. COVID has probably started to change, I guess, the way business have had to operate and work practices. What are your views? Do you think, I guess, as a result of COVID, there are going to be long-term changes to how business operates and workplace practices?
I hope so.
What kind of changes could you foresee, and do you think will maybe be a longer-term legacy of the adaptation that we've all had to make over recent months?
Well, I think there's been a lot of people working from home, and I think that's suited a lot of lifestyles. I think it's worked really well in the regions, and a lot of employers were probably, before COVID was on the scene, were reluctant to let staff work from home. They didn't think the work would get done, but it did. I think the big lesson, and there's been lots of articles about what life's going to be like after COVID and how work will change. The big thing for me is that most people say that everyone's change resistant. They're scared of change. And seeing COVID, people aren't scared of change at all. In fact, people embrace change, provided that they're scared of the uncertainty. And I think that's what people have got to address. We can instigate great changes in business, provided we address the uncertainty. So don't be scared of change. Just be the way you address it's the important lesson.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And business, not just, I guess, changing work practices, but generally, business wants certainty. They want it from government. They want to know that if they're going to make an investment, they've got that certainty ahead of them. And I think you're right. I think it is going to change work practices, and it could be a real boost for regional areas, because businesses can see that if you've got good staff and you invest in the right staff, they have the capacity to meet their obligations, to meet their work requirements whilst working remotely.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things that we've spoken about off-air previously, and I touched on it last week with Phil Dodds, who's the CEO at Focus, the software developing company based here, is the changing, I guess, technology and the rapid change of technology over recent years and how that changes business practices. And I guess accounting has been no exception to an industry or a sector that's had to adapt to technology. How has accounting practices changed in the years that you've been involved?
Wow, that's covering quite a few years. Yes.
And have you got any advice or tips for other businesses about the importance, I guess, of adapting business and technology to their business practices?
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because when I started in accounting, there were, I think there were two people that operated the computer, and everyone would put all their information into the operators and wait a few weeks for it to come back. We had comptometrists that sat on adding machines and balanced they'd add down ledgers to make sure they balanced. And that industry, when digital calculators came in, disappeared. That there was no need for the comptometrists. And there was, I vividly remember one woman that I worked with wouldn't change, and she became obsolete. And that's such a good lesson now. And we look at, like, cloud accounting is an absolute must for businesses. And if they're not getting real-time reports, it's frightening as to where they can be.
So for our viewers that aren't on cloud accounting, explain cloud accounting in simple terms for local business.
Cloud accounting is essentially your accounting software, same as traditional software that we've been using previously, but the information goes to the cloud, so your accountant can be looking at it at the same time as you are. The coding is done pretty much in real time, a lot of it automated, so that there's very few information inputs that's required to get your accounts to a stage where you can look at them and make sense of them from a business perspective and get real-time information from them.
And another thing that's changed is single-touch payroll. Can you explain single-touch payroll, because that's been a change over the last 12 months or thereabouts?
Yeah, the smaller employers, larger employers were in it the last year, and this year was the first for the smaller employers. Single-touch payroll is really just reporting to the tax office whenever there's a pay run, what you've paid employees, and it works out how much or reporting to the tax office how much tax has been withheld. So you don't really have to put that information on your BAS now, on your business activities statement. That's coming from the tax office. It means that the tax office is probably more sure about getting their money in real time. They can link it up and watch superannuation payments, so they can make sure people are compliant there. So you're reporting when wages are paid, when they're paid. And the tax office has got great visibility on that.
As you're right, it's probably, with the lack of time delays of those reporting, it's probably easier for them to track. And
which is a great thing, really. Like it's looking after the rights of employees.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what you said is a good point about changing technology. And I remember back when I was at school and they've started putting computers into classrooms. You know, and one of my teachers said, you know, Sam, you've got to focus on this stuff. It's going to go. And I said, Miss, computers, they're not going to take off. They're not going to take off. So
very prescient.
So that's probably one time I wasn't ahead of the curve there. But anyway, look, I thought we might just change tack. Every week we do Fast Five, where we delve in and ask a few kind of lighter questions to learn a little bit more about our special guest. And Weston, knowing the future's not one of my hidden talents or hobbies, which you can tell after that little anecdote, but what's one of your hidden talents or hobbies that viewers or even your work colleagues might not know about?
Well, my dogs are my passion, but my hobby would be learning languages.
Okay.
So I learned Italian for about 10 years. I still read Italian newspapers and watch Italian movies and things like that. And I've had a crack at Korean.
Okay.
Learned Korean for a year and
well,
Spanish.
I assume Korean might be a touch harder than Italian.
Very similar, actually.
Okay.
Very musical language. It's
really?
It's not a tonal language like a lot of the Asian languages. It's if you're going to learn an Asian language, I'd go straight to Korea.
Okay, well there you go. Look, I had to learn a bit of Italian at school. Couldn't tell you, wouldn't remember much now. But if you were reading the Italian newspapers, I reckon their local politics is probably a little bit more entertaining than Australian politics, with all of some of the behaviour and issues that have been going on there over recent years.
And a little more passion, perhaps.
Absolutely. Look, now, if someone was going to play you in a movie of your life, who do you think could get the role?
Well,
all good actors who you rate, I guess.
Hey, oh no, I think if I had someone playing me, it'd have to be John Goodman.
Okay, John Goodman.
I'd prefer it was Jeff Bridges, the dude in The Big Lebowski,
Yep.
but realistically, it's going back to John Goodman.
Both are very good actors. I'm a big Christian Bale fan. I've said that previously, and if he was able to do the role, I think I'd be very happy with that. Now, you grew up in Orange. You know the Central West well. And there are many fantastic hidden gems, but if you were trying to promote the region to family or friends, what would be a hidden gem that you would show them? You know, it could be a person, a place, a location, or a venue.
I promote Orange everywhere I go, and if I've got an audience, I'll tell them how good this district is. But I suppose the hidden gems, Orange is the hidden gem. To get people over the mountains is an incredible struggle, and maybe COVID will actually assist us to get people out to the regions to see how good it is. One of my favourite places is Carcoar.
Yep.
Absolutely love Carcoar, the history of the place, and it's just on the Blubya. It's beautiful little.
Absolutely, and I know they've got their Carcoar Australia Day Festival down there where they do the reenactments, which I think is classic, and they do the Carcoar Running Festival every November. So
Indeed, I'll watch.
I participated last year, but it was killer because deceptive how many hills
Good
there
hills
are.
there.
Yeah, plenty of hills out there.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about the different offerings, I guess, that this region has, but what's one of your favourite top tourism events or offerings that the region has each year?
I think if ever I tell people about Forage, they're hooked. They just want to be up for that event, and it's incredibly hard to get into. And I seem to manage to get to it every year, except I get tickets to every year, and I end up having to go to Sydney to teach or something like that on the day. So someone gets a freebie from me.
No, it is one of the premium events, I guess, for our region, and you're right, the demand for tickets is incredible, and I think it showcases the region, and maybe that is the hook to get those visitors to our region at least once, and then they're likely to come back. And maybe for regional people, we take it for granted, the trip to Sydney. We don't think it's that far, but sometimes the other way, bringing people out from Sydney, they think, oh, geez, it's a bit far, but it's not that far. So if you've got family, friends, rallies in Sydney, get them to come out to the Central West for a visit and spend a few dollars. I know the last couple of weekends...
Spend a few days.
And a few dollars, but I know the last few weeks have been good for local business. A lot of visitors starting to come back to the region, which I think is really positive. For me, I know there's forage, but there's also Grazing the Lachlan down at Forbes, a similar style event, which is fantastic. So if you like good food, if you like good events, pencil those two in your respective diaries for the year ahead.
There's so many though. All the wineries put on events and. It's fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think this region has such a diverse... Now, we spoke to Caddy Marshall a few weeks ago, and if you ever want a passionate tourism advocate, there's one right there. But I think our region has such a diverse range of different events and offerings. We can tailor any type of visit for any type of potential visitor, which I think is fantastic. Now, you interact with a lot of businesses. We've been talking a little bit about the opportunities that might exist now with changing work practices for decentralisation, but if there was a potential business out there looking to invest in the region or make the move, what would be your top reason that you would encourage them to do that?
Well, you've got the lifestyle, but you've got all the facilities as well. There's nothing. You're not far from Sydney if you need to get to Sydney. You're not far from Canberra if you need to get to Canberra. But it is. It's such a fantastic place to bring up children, and it's got education. It's got hospitals. It's a resilient economy because we are diverse. We've got a lot of. We're not reliant on one particular industry, which a lot of country places suffer from. If that industry goes down, the town goes down with it, whereas we've actually got enough critical mass and we've got a good, diverse economy and good resources.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And we touched on that diversity of the economy here earlier in the chat, but I think it's really probably been more evident during COVID with the strong public service base that we have here, strong health, strong mining footprint that we've got in the region. Cadia's going through an expansion phase as we speak, and then you've got the reliance on ag, and I guess with recent rains there's a little bit more confidence coming through the ag sector, and you've got that diversity there. And I didn't even touch on education or health, right. I don't think, but you see, if you think about those 5 prongs of the local economy, it's a good foundation to build on. But I guess coming out of COVID, some businesses, as we said, have been doing it tough, but there are some that have kind of remained quite resilient. In your opinion, what do you think could be some of the potential growth industries as we transition our way out of COVID-19? And in a macro level, how do you think the Australian economy might track over the next kind of 6 to 12 months, but also locally here in the Central West?
Wow.
Big question, loaded question.
It's a very, anyone predicting 2020 is sort of...
I know, who could have forecasted after we started with the drought and then bushfires and now COVID?
Perhaps attack of aliens or something like that. No, I think locally is probably an easier one. I'm not an economist, I'm an accountant, but locally I think we will do well because with the people I don't think we'll be travelling internationally for a while, and people will be looking for good places to visit and holiday, and we're one of them. So I think we'll benefit from that. And we do have that resilience. So I think Orange is sort of reasonably well placed, being with a big emphasis on tourism and hospitality. I think possibly we could be prone to another outbreak. That's a concern, so who knows what will happen there. The Australian economy has been, like I've read the reports, we're contracting, but the Australian government is spending money too at the same time. I don't think we'll have as much the parties working together. I think they'll start to move apart and start to look for a few differences to separate them over the next few months. But really, I think compared to a lot of economies in the world, Australia is well placed. We just have to be able to, at some stage, break out of isolation.
I think we are in a better position if you look at how the governments, irrespective of level, have managed COVID to date. I think they've done a good job. I think you're right about the local economy here. I think we're in a very good position compared to a lot of other regions in Australia. And I think you're right, with the restrictions that are still going to be in place with international travel, there's a real opportunity, especially for Orange, because we have, as we've spoken earlier about the different offerings and our proximity to Sydney. A lot of people, and I've heard it just anecdotally, people that had planned to be going overseas in this time of the year have just recalibrated their expectations and have decided to come to the Central West. So, and it's not just here, it's in other parts of the country as well.
And we've got some big projects that are continuing to kick on that's going to provide a lot of employment. So I think we've got 2 major hotels going up. We've got the sports ground hopefully starting soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to tip my hat to the local council here, because I know they've brought forward a lot of their infrastructure projects. And I think that went through council, the budget went through council on Tuesday this week. And I think that's important, because bringing forward those projects, getting that money circulating in the economy. And you would know this as an accountant, but construction, it has a very strong economic multiplier. Absolutely. It's good for local business, local suppliers. And you know, the federal government, they announced the Building Better Regions Fund the other week, and that's another investment in those local job-creating projects. And I think that's absolutely vital right now. So I guess a bit of a change of tact. You know, you said you were a partner of accounting firms in Sydney. You've got a long history in accounting. But what would be a couple of tips, I guess, that you might have, or advice you might have for a younger person out there that's looking to start, firstly, their own business? And what are some challenges or considerations that they might want to be aware of before they kind of make a decision?
Well, I'd always say get a good accountant first.
Good segue, good plug for pmwPlus there, Weston. Nice.
But at least get a mentor, I think. Get someone that you can ask questions, someone that you trust and is qualified either academically or practically, who has done it before you. I think it's really important. I always tell people when they come in, when they've just kicked off a business, the very first thing I go through them is their tax payments, because they have a big tax holiday. They don't pay tax in the first year, essentially, and then they don't get a tax bill until, say, May the following year, and they have to pay a full year's tax. Yeah. And then they have to pay instalments of tax. They get almost double tax at the end of the second year. A lot of people don't plan for that, and a lot of people come to, if it doesn't tip them over, it makes their life misery for quite a while to get out of it. And then working back on that, do some planning, watch your cash flows. New business is always going to be cash flow negative, so you need to have that resource. But probably the best bit of advice is to just do it. Do your planning, but you've got to move it from a dream to an actuality at some point, and I think that's the really difficult bit, and that's probably the biggest step to make. Yeah,
I think it's a fair point, and I like what you said about mentors. I was always told to have 3 mentors at any one time, because if you've got 3 people that you can draw on from frank and good advice, usually they come from different backgrounds and they can give you kind of different perspectives, and it helps you make that better decision. And I like that. And here at RDA, we're doing our 10 for 10 mentoring program this year, which is looking to partner Year 11 students, 10 Year 11 students from the region with 10 local industry and community leaders. And I think that was kind of one of the learnings that I personally had that I thought we could deliver through this program. But I think you're right, you've got to have a crack, you know, with a business, back your instincts, back your product, and I guess, but know your product, know your market, and know your target audience before you make that decision is another good piece of advice that we've picked up here. Now, we're coming towards the end of our chat, I guess, for this morning. So I really appreciate you coming in this morning, Weston, and I'm sure it's been providing some great insights to our regular viewers. But what's your bold prediction, I guess, for the remainder of 2020? Not for our region, but also your prediction for pmwPlus for the remainder of 2020.
Well, for pmwPlus, I think it'll be quite a big end of financial year party. That's my first prediction, because it's been a hard slog the last few months.
Socially distanced party, of course.
Absolutely socially distanced.
Maybe a house party instead.
No, I think people are time to get out of those webinar parties. I think it's time to actually celebrate appropriately. Which we'll do, but in the longer term, I think it is keeping an eye on the situation. It's being responsive to clients' needs. I think we did that really well when things broke in disseminating information and getting it out to our clients so that they knew what was happening. And I think we're going to be watching closely because there's going to be a lot of quick responses required.
Yeah, I think we'll say pmwPlus, you did do a lot of good webinars early on, and I know we did the Ask the Accountant event with RDA a month or so ago, which was, working our way through some of those stimulus measures to give business the good advice, the frank advice about the different processes and they need to be followed. So
and I suppose timely and prompt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I remain. I'm a perennial optimist, but I still have high levels of optimism, I guess, for the remainder of 2020, especially for the Central West. I think we can't underestimate the value to the region's economy of a strong mining footprint, because that's kind of continued pretty well unimpacted over recent months. And I think the other thing that we've got to take confidence from is, I know by no means are we out of the drought, but with the recent rains, I can noticeably see confidence returning to the ag sector in this region, and it's been a pillar of the economy here for generations. And I think that's something that is timely, and it should just help, I guess, insulate our region from the worst ongoing impacts of COVID if it continues to have negative impacts on the broader economy, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to predict a little more rain.
Look, it's been a good start over recent weeks. So it's been brisk around town, that's for sure. But hopefully there's plenty more rain around the corner. But look, finally, before we wrap up for this morning, Weston, how can local businesses engage with pmwPlus if they want to, I guess, learn more about pmwPlus or get some general advice from you or the team there? What's the best way that they can do that?
Well, we've got a pretty good website, Sam. We update it, and it's our material that it gets updated with. It's not purchased, so you don't see it on the same website of every accountant. It's often targeted at the regional area, specific to Orange. So that's a good place to start. Otherwise, most people know where we are, in that big white building on the corner of Hill and Summer. So
we'll chuck up the pmwPlus website on the RDA Facebook page after this morning's chat. And also your footprint, it's the broader Central West. I know you're based here in Orange, but you service clients. How far and wide are we talking?
Pretty far and wide. Okay. We sort of go east to New Zealand, and I'm not sure how far west we go, but it's pretty far west.
So there you go. Look, Weston, appreciate the time. As I said, I think it's been really insightful learning a little bit more, I guess, about your personal journey to the Central West, the long family history that you've had with the region, but also to delve in a little bit further into some of the services and advice that pmwPlus can provide. But look, there you have it, viewers. Another business breakfast wrapped up for this week. Join us at the same time next Friday when I sit down with Mark Coulton, Federal Member for Parks and Minister for Regional Health, Regional Communications and Local Government. But until then, have a great weekend, stay warm, and we'll catch you next week.